Hello and welcome to Narayana Eyes. I'm Pratik, your faculty for daily news analysis. Students, in today's DNA, we are going to focus on 4 topics picked up from the Hindu newspaper. So make sure you're fresh, you're attentive so that you understand each and every topic. Let us start today's DNA by a motivational quote. And what is today's motivational quote? Change comes with pain. But this pain later becomes a kin. Wow, what a motivational quote is this? So, whenever you're changing your habits, or let's say adopting a new process, or changing something, there is pain involved in the change. Let's say, for example, you study in the night. Now you decide to wake up early in the morning so that you can be fresh and study as much as possible. Right now, this change, right, comes with pain. But this pain, if once you develop the habit of getting up early, it helps your health, right? And this later becomes a gain. Gain in terms of both your health as well as success in the examination, right? So don't worry about the pain because this pain will give you relief once you see success. So all those students who want to clear the examination, prelims 2025, we have developed a self-study planner, right? We have made a self-study planner. So please go to the planner and see how much of your schedule can align with our planner. And in case you're finding it difficult to let's say make a timetable, you can follow our planner which we have made for students of 2025, the ones who are going to take prelims examination this year. So you can get this planner by downloading our application, right? So the QR code that you can see on the screen, please scan the QR code so that you can download the application and then you can have access to the plan. And then for students who want to appear next year, next to next year, or who are in your graduation, right? We have come up with 1 year and 2 year prelims cum means integrated course. All those students who are interested to prepare for the examination holistically, because here we try to simplify the process as much as we can, right? So all those students who want to appear for the examination, contribute to the growth of a nation, can enroll in our 1 year and 2 year integrated course. Please scan the QR code, fill in the details, and our team will get back to you with all the details that you need or you seek. On this note, let us start with the topics of the day. These are the 4 topics. The first topic talks about the relationship between India and Qatar being elevated to strategic partnership. So we'll understand the essence of the term strategic partnership, and this article is taken from Hindu page number 1, right? The second article is taken from Hindu page number 6, and this talks about the rising trend which is posing, or rising trend challenges between the center and the states, which is posing a challenge to the federal characteristics of the Indian constitution. So we'll understand what is federalism, the constitutional provisions, followed by the challenges. The third article we have taken from text and context page number 3. Now this article focuses on the doctrine, which is a legal principle. And what is the name of the doctrine? Rarest of rare. Now this doctrine, it governs the application of death penalty in our country. And the fourth article is taken from Hindu page number 7, and this article highlights the danger of digital censorship by the government. So these are the 4 articles that we shall be discussing in today's Q&A. Right, students? So let's start with the first topic. The title of the first topic is India-Qatar Elevate Ties to Strategic Partnership. So we shall be focusing on different dimensions in the India-Qatar relationship. And this topic, you can link it with GS paper 2, right? That is international relations. Under IR, we have bilateral, regional and global grouping. involving India and affecting India's interest. Now, why do we study this topic? Because questions of this sort can be asked in the examination. What is the question? The question of India's energy security constitutes the most important part of India's economic progress, right? Analyze India's energy policy cooperation with West Asian countries. Now, given the West Asia, the Middle East, and their objective, their policy being to diversify their economy, that is, they want to strengthen their relationship with other countries in different sectors, one being energy sector, right? So questions of this sort can be asked. That's the reason we need to study about Middle East, or let's say Qatar, which is a part of Middle East. Now, recently, that is yesterday, both the countries, they graduated their relationship. They took their relationship one step ahead, and now the relationship between both the countries is defined as strategic partnership. So you'll understand what is strategic partnership, right? And this partnership was signed when the Premier of Qatar, right? He visited India, and both the premiers, that is India's Prime Minister and the Premier of Qatar, they signed strategic partnership, thus opening a new chapter in the India-Qatar relationship, right? So now Qatar is a part of Middle East. When it comes to examination, it is very important for you to by heart the West Asia map. West Asia topic is one of the favorites for the UPSC examination. So please, you have to by heart all the countries. For example, the countries bordering Persian Gulf, the countries bordering Mediterranean Sea, the countries bordering Red Sea. Then we have important gulfs like Gulf of Oman, Gulf of Aden. So I request you to please by heart this West Asia map. You need to know each and every country and a country bordering which other countries. So here is Qatar, right? This space. This is Qatar. Now, what is strategic partnership? It's a formal framework. It's a formal framework or foundation for long-term relationship. It's a framework for long-term relationship across various critical or important sectors, right? Critical sectors. Now, these sectors, for example, security, defense, and these sectors where both the countries are cooperating, they are of mutual interest, mutual benefit, both the countries benefit. This strategic partnership reflects shared goals, which means the goals are the same for two countries for comprehensive cooperation, which means now the relationship is moving beyond economic partnership. So whenever countries try to establish relationship with other countries, they start with trading, right? This is what we discussed in ancient history. So they start with trading, but now they are they're getting the relationship move beyond economic sector, economic sphere. There's political cooperation, energy cooperation, defense cooperation, security cooperation, cultural cooperation. Now see, let's try to understand the difference between these partnerships. These terms are often seen or heard in the context of I. So we'll understand what is FTA first. Free Trade Agreement, which means both the countries decide that they will reduce tariff, that is taxes on selected goods. On selected goods. This is FTA. Reduces tariffs and trade barriers. So they are, let's say, 20 items or 20 products the countries trade in. Now, two countries decide that out of 20, on 10 items or 10 products, we are reducing the tariff. It focuses only on trade and market taxes. Now, this is one step ahead of FTA. This includes only trade. This also includes trade and services, right? A more comprehensive, right? It includes investments, services, and intellectual property rights, which means you're protecting the innovation. This is one step ahead of FTA. Now, strategic partnership is a very broad agreement, right? There's cooperation in the field of trade, defense, energy, diplomacy. Now, from the point of view of security, this partnership is very important. For example, we have strategic partnership with USA, with Israel, because from the security point of view, these countries are important for our country. Russia is also a strategic partner, right? So, comprehensive cooperation with security dimension. With security dimension. I hope you understood the difference between FTA, CEPA, and strategic partnership. So, when countries are strategic partners, that encompasses, that includes FTA, CEPA, everything. Now, first we'll understand the areas of cooperation. So, when we say that India and Qatar are strategic partners, what does it mean? That they cooperate in different areas, different sectors. Which different sectors? Trade, economy, defense, security, political, cultural, education, trade. As of now, the trade is $15 billion. Both the countries have set a target of 30 billion by 2030, just in 5 years. And this is what India exports to Qatar, and this is, so Qatar exports what? Predominantly it is the LNG, that is liquefied natural gas and crude oil. Very important. It is one of the major suppliers of LNG to India. Who? Qatar. And Qatar also promised that they will make 10 billion investment in our country, right? In India's infrastructure, technology, and energy sector. So this is one area where both the countries are cooperating. Next is energy security. As I told you, Qatar is the largest supplier of LNG. It constitutes 40% of India's total LNG imports. Of all the LNG that India imports from other countries, 40% LNG, liquefied natural gas, is coming from Qatar. India imports 8.5 million metric tons of LNG. This is not important. This data is not important to remember. This one is important, this one. And then India is exploring more opportunities to import gas, crude oil, and other energy resources, especially in the renewable sector, that is solar and uh, hydrogen energy sectors, right? Third is finance, the signing of double taxation avoidance agreement. Now, what does it mean? Let's say a company is doing business both in India and Qatar. Now, this company is supposed to pay taxes in India. Let's say there's a company of Qatar that has a business in India, which means this company has to pay taxes in India as well as in Qatar. The parent company is in Qatar. Now, this will add tax burden on the companies, which can affect their productivity. That's the reason both the countries have decided that, okay, we'll sign double taxation, which means the companies now, they do not have to pay double taxes, that is tax in Qatar as well as in India. This because see, as the taxes are so high, for example, in India, the taxes are so high, they're exorbitant. That's the reason people try to save the tax liability. People try to evade their taxation liability. For example, let's say a person wants to buy a house. The cost of the house is, let's say, 2 crores, but on paper he'll show only 1 crore. Why? Because if he shows 2 crore, he has to pay more tax. He shows 1 crore so that his tax liability reduces by half, and the remaining 50% he pays through different routes. And then the sovereign wealth fund of Qatar is trying to explore opportunities to invest in India's startups. This is finance. The third one is security cooperation. Now, given the threat that the world is witnessing, right, both the countries have come together to sign security agreement, which means there will be joint training of the Indian and the Qatari forces. There will be intelligence sharing, intel information, right, which will help both the countries to take actions or prevent an accident. Now, given that the West Asia conflict is often in the news, this time because of Israel-Palestine, or let's say conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, both the countries have signed security agreements so as to ensure that the region is safe, to ensure what? Regional stability, to ensure regional stability and reduce the tension. Technology. Now, both the countries are committed to cooperate in research, innovation, technology like artificial intelligence, fintech, cyber security. Then cultural and diaspora. Now, people of Indian origin are 7 lakh in number in Qatar. 7 lakh in number, and both the sides are committed to ensure the welfare of people. For example, Qatar, right? Qatar granted 85 pardons to the Indian prisoners, which means of all the 85 prisoners were set free by the government of Qatar. This shows that the cooperation is on the right track and both the countries are cooperating so as to strengthen the relationship. Food security, again, they are working to strengthen their food supply chains, which means there is no food scarcity, right? So that there has to be smooth import of agriculture products from India to Qatar. And then Qatar is also investing in India's agriculture and cold storage infrastructure. This will help food security in our country. Food security. So these are the different areas in which India and Qatar are cooperating. I hope you understood the meaning of strategic partnership and how it is different from other partnerships. Now, what is the significance? Economic growth, which means when Qatar invests in our country, we'll have more jobs. More jobs, which means people will have money in their pockets. They will spend, the demand will go up, supply goes up, demand goes up, the economy grows. So it will lead to economic growth. Second is energy security. In a highly unstable world, energy security is very, very important. And given that Qatar has committed to supply regular oil and LNG, liquefied natural gas, this will help India to be secure in energy sector. The third one is geopolitical influence. Now both the countries are working together. How? By joint training, by intelligence sharing, so as to ensure they bring stability, peace in the region. And fourth, cultural integration. Now both the countries have cultural programs. The Indian culture will be shown in Qatar. The culture of Qatar will be shown in India. There will be educational programs, and this will strengthen the people to people relationship, people to people contact. And what are the broader strategic implication of this strategic partnership? Now the broader implication is that India's partnership with GCC. What is GCC? Now GCC is a grouping. It's a political grouping and economic grouping comprising these 6 countries. Right now, India is strengthening relationship, or India has very, very good relationship with this GCC bloc, Gulf Cooperation Council, right? So that is the significance. Now until the 90s and 2000s, right, there's a huge gap between the cooperation or between India and these countries. Now, given India's economic heft, India's political stability, economic stability, right, and growing India's stature, countries want to cooperate with India so that there is mutual benefit. This is the broader implication of India and Qatar coming together to sign strategic partnership. This strengthens India's relationship as well as India's growing influence in the regions beyond South Asia, Now, what is GCC? As I told, it's a political and economic grouping comprising these countries. And GCC and India coming together for what? For economic cooperation, political cooperation, security cooperation, right? So this is the article. I hope you have understood the first article. Now the second article. The title of the second topic is Eroding Federalism. Eroding Federalism. So in this article, we'll understand the concept of federalism and the challenges to federalism, right? And you can map this topic under GS paper 2. In GS paper 2, we have polity, and under polity, we have this subtopic, functions and responsibilities of the union and the states, and the challenges pertaining to the federal characteristic of the Indian constitution. So let's go through a PYQ asked on the concept of federalism. So the concept of cooperative federalism has been increasingly emphasized in recent years, right? For our growth, for the growth of a country, it is very important that the center and the states cooperate. So there has to be competitive and cooperative federalism. Highlight the drawbacks in the existing structure and extent to which cooperative federalism would answer these shortcomings, which means here we need to highlight on the challenges the center and the states are facing and how cooperative federalism can answer or can be an answer to the challenges between the center and the states. Now, recently, the union government refused to disperse money to Tamil Nadu under the Samagra Shiksha Fund. Why? Because Tamil Nadu government refused to be a part of the national or refused to implement the National Education Policy 2020. So only the countries only the states who are part of national education policy, these states get funding under the Samagra Shiksha funds. And as Tamil Nadu government has refused to be a part of NEP, they are not getting grants under this fund. And this has reignited the debate of the nature of federalism in our country. At the same time, Tamil Nadu also has refused 3-language formula and has adopted 2-language formula, which the point is there are growing challenges between the center and the state, especially if the governments in the center and the state, if it's not same, then there's a growing problem or a growing challenge to the concept and nature of federalism in our country. So let us try to understand the nuances of this topic. First and foremost, what exactly is federalism? What is federalism? It is nothing but it's a political system. A political system where the power is divided between the center and the states or the constituent units, which means the power is divided between center and the states, or let's say the local units as well. And the Constitution of India says that India is a quasi-federal structure. India is a quasi-federal structure. which means India is not a fully federal structure. Why? Because quasi-federal, which means India is a state or the political system is a blend, is a mixture of federal as well as unitary characteristics. India is not fully, or as per the definition, India is not a complete federal state. Rather, India is a quasi-federal, which means there is a blend mixture of unitary features and federal features. So, which are unitary features? For example, all India services, right? It's a unitary feature. For example, integrated judiciary, the Supreme Court at the top, followed by high courts and lower courts. These are the unitary features, right? We have unitary features and then we have federal feature. For example, 7th schedule where the power is shared. Let's say independent judiciary, bicameral legislature, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, Vidhan Sabha and Vidhan Parishad, legislative assembly and legislative council. So India is a quasi-federal state and this federalism ensures a balance of power, which means it allows local autonomy also maintaining national unity. So the essence is we are giving power to the local people, states and let's say the panchayats and the municipalities. At the same time, India is a quasi-federal. Why? To maintain national unity. Local autonomy should not come at the cost of national unity, because if the nation does not exist, the states will crumble. I hope you understood the concept of federalism where the power is divided. Let us try to understand in detail the concept of federalism through some examples. Division of powers. 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution contains 3 lists: the union list, state list and concurrent list, which means the subjects in the union list, only the central government can frame laws. For example, defense, foreign affairs, banking, telegraph, railways, which means when it comes to defense, foreign affairs, only the union government can frame laws. State list, only the state government can frame laws. For example, law and order, agriculture, health, betting and gambling. Concurrent list, both the center and the states can frame laws. For example, we have education, very important. Education comes under concurrent list. Then we have marriage and divorce, concurrent list. This is how the powers are divided between the center and the constituent units. Then we have Article 246, which defines the legislative competence, through this 7th schedule: union list, state list, concurrent list. Article 256 obligates states to follow laws made by parliament. Now, the laws that the parliament will make, the states have to obey the laws. And in case the states do not obey the laws as framed by the parliament, it amounts to breakdown of constitutional framework or constitutional machinery. Which means, for example, let's say the central government, railways, has made a law on railways. Now the states are expected to obey the laws, follow the laws made by the parliament. Then we have Article 257, which ensures states must not impede the executive power of the union. Let's say the central government has given a direction to the states with respect to maintenance of railways. In this case, the states cannot refuse to obey the direction given by the center. If they do, President's rule will be imposed. Article 262, it gives Parliament the authority to decide disputes related to interstate water disputes. For example, we have Krishna River. Kaveri River. So these are the rivers that is a conflict between one or more states. So when it comes to interstate water disputes, it is the parliament who decides or resolves the issue. Then we have Article 257, which allows for grantinate, help to states from the Consolidated Fund of India. Then Interstate Council. Now Interstate Council is a framework, is a platform where the center and states can resolve their issues. Or let's say two states have an issue. This is a platform which gives the government the authority or power or platform to resolve the disputes between center and the states, or let's say between states. So these are the constitutional provisions with respect to the concept of federalism in our country. Now, as I told you, there are growing challenges because of the evolving political economic landscape. There are challenges to the concept of federalism. Which are the challenges? The first one is delimitation and representation imbalance. We know Indian Parliament, the members in the Indian Parliament, they come from different states, which means if the population of a state is more, then more members are represented in the parliament. Let's say Uttar Pradesh has 10 crore people. Uttar Pradesh has 10 crore people, so there are 50 members from the state of Uttar Pradesh. But Kerala has only, let's say, 2 crore people. Uttar Pradesh has 50 members, Kerala has only 5 members. Which means based on the population now, which means the delimitation or representation of seats in parliament is done as per 1971 census. Now, if we consider the recent trends, it there's a evidence stating that the southern states have managed to control their population, whereas the northern states are yet to control their population. The northern states are yet to control their population, which essentially means that whenever the census is undertaken, we see the southern states have managed to control their population and the northern states have not managed to control their population, which means that the representation in parliament from the northern states will further increase and the representation from the southern states will decrease. You will have more member of parliaments from the northern states and less member of parliaments from the southern states. Now, the goal of a country was to control the population. Why? Because the population was increasing exponentially. The southern states have done a better job. They have been successful to control their population. Now, against their success, the central government, in case they decide to increase the representation, it suggests that the southern states are being penalized for completing their homework. This is a concern. In case, now you may wonder what will be the implication, what's wrong if there are more members from the northern states? No. Which means the laws framed in the parliament will be more favorable to the northern states over the southern states. This is a problem. There's a threat to the ethnic and linguistic identity of people in southern states. Maybe as there are more members in parliament from north, maybe the South Indian languages can be ignored or the northern languages will be given more preference. This is the first challenge. The second challenge is fiscal federalism and fiscal federalism conflicts. Now see, every state contributes to the center's exchequer. In the central government's account, the way we pay taxes to the states or to the government, similarly the states are expected to contribute to the center. In return, what do they get? let's say if the southern states like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, if they contribute 100 rupees, they get only 30 rupees back. But if northern states like let's say Bihar, they contribute 100 rupees, they get 500 rupees in return. They are contributing less, getting more. Why? Because states like Bihar is a less developed state, is not a prosperous state, is not a prosperous state. That's the reason the government helps the not so prosperous states by giving more funds to those states, giving more funds to those states. So this is another conflict. The third conflict, autonomy over education policy. Now education is part of concurrent list. Language imposition. For example, the central government framed three language formula. What is this three language formula? One, the first language will be mother tongue or the regional language. The second will be Hindi, as it is a common language or most spoken language in our country. The third language is English. Why? Because English is used for administrative work in the judiciary, then to interact with the outside world we need English. So this is three language formula. Tamil Nadu rejected this three language formula, stating that will follow two language formula. What is this two language? One is your regional language or mother tongue. The second one is English. They have rejected this language. Now, the southern states say that we do not need Hindi. We are comfortable with English and our regional language. For example, national education policy. All the southern states contain that not it's not necessary that every time the central government frames a law, it meets the regional aspiration. Which means the law that the parliament is making should be in alignment with the needs of the region or the state. For example, Tamil Nadu feels that the national education policy framed by the central government does not meet the regional aspiration. Does not meet the regional aspiration. For example, there's a controversy surrounding NEET examination. Tamil Nadu refused to participate in the NEET examination. So this is another issue. Then we have appointment and rule of governors. Now the governor is an agent between the central government and the state government, right? Now the president appoints the governor, right? Every state has a governor. Now for example, let's say if the government is not the same in the center and let's say in one state, now the central government will try to use the governor to intervene in the domestic or rather day-to-day administration of the state government. The governor is not expected to intervene in the day-to-day administration. The governor acts as a bridge between the central government and the state government. He is expected to remain neutral, but um, but the instances, right, or rather the experience has shown that the governors have been more biased and not neutral. More often we have experienced that the governors being biased, which is not good for the federal characteristic of the Indian constitution, right? This is another problem. Legislative overreach. What is this doctrine of colorable legislation? It's a legal principle, which determines whether the legislature has the competence to make a law. For example, the parliament has the competence to make a law on defense. But has a parliament got the power to make a law on, let's say, agriculture? No. Why? Because agriculture is a state subject. So if agriculture is a state subject, how come the central government framed farm laws in the year 2020? Is a question. Which means it suggests that the central government is overreaching or entering into the domain of the state governments, posing a challenge to the federal characteristics. Next, administrative power conflict. For example, this arises between the central government and the union territory, especially the Delhi case. In Delhi, the government was of Aam Aadmi Party, the central government had BJP government. So the central government used lieutenant governor who is the administrator or appointed by the central government, and this lieutenant governor used to interfere in day-to-day administration of the Delhi government. Then political and ideological clashes. Let's take the example of Kerala. The ideology of the central government BJP and Kerala's LDF is not the same. So when there are ideological clashes, it leads to a disruption between the central government and the state government. Then we have security and autonomy issues. AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Power Act, AFSPA, Armed Forces. Now, whenever the security of a state it goes beyond control, then the central government imposes this law, giving the army abnormal power. And for example, AFSPA, when it was imposed, let's say northeastern state or let's say in Jammu and Kashmir, it led to human right violations, and at the same time the local autonomy was lost. That's the reason the state governments they oppose the imposition of AFSPA. So these are some instances through which it suggests that the competitive federalism is eroding. Why? Because of this centralization tendency of the central government. It is very important that there has to be utmost cooperation between the center and the states. Right? So these are the challenges to the concept of federalism. Now, let us understand the third topic, which is by the name this rarest of the rare doctrine. So we'll understand this doctrine, map it under GS paper 2 polity. Now there's a question asked on death sentence, and this topic is pertaining to the death sentence, right? So let's understand how. Now this topic discusses the doctrine. What is the doctrine? Rarest of the rare doctrine, which governs the application of death penalty in a country. Which means whether death penalty is Fasi, whether death penalty is to be given to a convict. How is it decided? Based on the rarest of the rare doctrine. Now this is important pertaining to two important cases. One is the RG Medical College in Calcutta, where a doctor was brutally raped, and then we have another Sharon murder case. Let us try to understand the doctrine first. Now, rarest of rare doctrine is a legal principle which determines whether the death penalty should be given. Now, it states that the capital punishment, that is death sentence, should be given in the rarest of rare cases. Now, for example, let's say just because a person has committed murder, he should not be awarded death punishment or capital punishment, is what the doctrine says. In the rarest of rare case, especially when the crime is very, very severe, the Nirbhaya case, When the crime is at most severe, it shakes the conscience of a person, or a person has been brutally raped and murdered. When the gravity of the crime is intense, only then the death penalty or capital punishment is avoided. Capital punishment is avoided as a last solution, especially when other punishment like life imprisonment, lifelong you have to stay in jail. When the judiciary finds or sees that this alternative punishment, lifelong imprisonment, is not sufficient, in that case the judiciary awards death penalty. The judiciary awards death penalty. So this is the doctrine. Rarest of rare, which means death penalty is awarded in the rarest of rare case. Very, let's say, it's not a frequent decision or judgment. On rare occasion, death penalty or Fasi is given. This is what we understand by the doctrine, rarest of rare. Now these are the judicial precedents, judicial examples. For example, in the year 1972, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality, which means the Supreme Court said that yes, death penalty, giving death penalty is constitutional under Article 21. What is Article 21? Right to life. However, it acknowledged a lack of clear guidance for deciding when to impose, which means we do not know. There are no clear guidelines to determine when the death penalty should be given and when it should not be given. When it should be given and when it should not be given. There are no clear legal guidelines. In the year 1980, the Supreme Court bench, it established this doctrine. When? In the year 1980. So please remember this term, right? Please remember this case, very important for your examination. The court ruled that capital punishment, that is death penalty, can be awarded in exceptional cases, very rare case. Second example. Third, in the year 1983, the Supreme Court outlined 5 criteria. These are the criteria on the basis of which it can be decided whether the death sentence has to be given or it shouldn't be given. First one is brutality, which means if the incident is very severe, very gruesome. Motive, if the murder is committed showing extreme depravity, which means corrupt mind, when the intention was to torture a person and kill that person. Third, social impact, if there is a social outrage, especially post the Nirbhaya incident, there is a social outrage. Fourth, magnitude, if multiple murders are committed, let's say a person is killing 10 people. Last, victims vulnerable. Who is the victim? Whether is a child, woman, elderly or helpless person. So these are the 5 criteria on the basis of which the judiciary will determine if capital punishment has to be avoided or it shouldn't be avoided. Now the problem is, who decides whether the crime is brutal or gruesome? Let's say a person is killing another person. It's also brutal, right? So let's say there are 2 people who are committing murders. One person stabbed knife the other person, uh, let's say tortured this person and then killed the person. For the victims, it amounts to brutality. Who decides? There are no clear guidelines. Now in this 1983 case, the Supreme Court struck down section 303 of the Indian Penal Code. This section 303 made it mandatory death penalty for lifetime convicts, which means if the judiciary awards lifetime punishment to a convict, that person can be awarded death sentence, that is Fasi. The Supreme Court said that it is unconstitutional, struck down section 303 and said that each case should be judged individually. And then finally in the year 2022, the Supreme Court referred to a constitution bench. Constitution bench is a bench comprising 5 judges or more. Now here the Supreme Court has said this 5 judges to develop a uniform approach. There should be a uniform approach considering mitigating factors, which means before a person is given death sentence, which are the mitigating factors or factors which can reduce the punishment, or rather when there is absolutely no other solution but to give death penalty. So this task has been given to the Supreme Court Constitution Bench. Now this bench will decide a uniform approach to determine whether death penalty should be avoided or it shouldn't be avoided. Now here see, in this R.G. Kar Medical College, where a woman doctor was brutally raped, right? Here the Supreme Court said that the rarest of rare doctrine is not applicable. And in the second instance, where a woman poisoned her partner with Ayurvedic drink, the court deemed it to be rarest of rare case. First episode, it's not a rarest of rare case. Second, it's a rarest of rare case. What is the rationale? There is no clear guidelines. There is no uniform approach. That's the reason a constitution bench has been given this task. And what is Article 21? Right to life, which means every person has a right to live. Life can be also taken away subject to procedure which is established by law. If a person commits a murder, then the life can be taken away. This is Article 21. So whether, if I ask you a question, whether capital punishment in our country is legally prescribed, yes, it is legally prescribed. It is legal in our country to award death punishment or capital punishment. These are few examples on the basis of which death penalty can be given. I hope you understood the third article as well. Now let us understand the fourth article, the danger of digital censor board. So we'll understand what is digital censorship and important for both prelims as well as means. A question on right to privacy has been asked, right? So now what is the context? We know that recently on a YouTube show, something very bad or nasty, something very vulgar was spoken by a YouTuber. I do not want to name the YouTuber, neither the YouTube show. But something very ugly was spoken in the show. We all know what was spoken. And then it received backlash from the political leaders, from the legal authorities. Even the Supreme Court remarked that the language that was used during the show reflects the mindset of a person which is nothing but corrupted, perverted. Now the controversy is not only about whether the word spoken was offensive, but here we need to understand whether the government should be controlling the digital content, which means whether should we allow the government to decide what the people should see and what the people should not see. Should the government be allowed to take this decision? To censor the digital content is a $1,000,000 question. So first and foremost, we'll understand what is Article 19(1)(a). It allows for a person to speak and express whatever he or she wants. Whatever he or she wants. But this is subject to restriction. I cannot, let's say, speak against the interest of a country. I cannot speak something really vulgar. Your freedom of speech and expression is subject to restrictions. It is subject to restrictions like, what is subject to restrictions like morality, decency, public order and national security, which means whatever you speak and do and act should not go against the moral values, right? It should not be indecent. It should not go against the public order, that is disturb the peace, or it should not go against the interest of a country. So whatever you say, if it is vulgar, if it is indecent, if it is immoral, there can be restriction on what you speak and say. There can be also punishment. But who decides what is moral and what is immoral? Who decides what is indecent and decent? For example, many people believe that wearing western clothes or let's say bikini is fine, is decent. But many people believe that wearing such clothes is indecent or immoral. Who decides? Many people say, or many people feel that intercaste marriage, it goes against the social norms. Many people say that it is absolutely normal. Many people say that live-in relationship is immoral or not decent. Many people believe that it is decent, it is absolutely normal. Who decides? This is a gray area. Now, which are the laws that govern the obscenity or vulgarity in our country? Again, the question is, who decides whether a scene is obscene, vulgar? These are some gray areas, or there are lack of clear legal guidelines. For example, section 294 of the BNS, which replaced IPC, it criminalizes sale, import, export, advertisement, profit making from obscene materials. Obscene, which is very bad, which is very vulgar, which is very dirty. It is criminalized, right? Section 296, it deals with public obscenity. For example, a public act, let's say PDA, public display affection, if it causes annoyance in a public place. Let's say two people kissing in a metro station, right? Whether it causes public annoyance or it disturbs the public order. Singing, reciting or uttering obscene words, for example, uttering abuses. Punishment, and the punishment is up to 3 months imprisonment, jail or fine of 1000 rupees. Now here the Supreme Court made a very important remark. The Supreme Court said that coarse language, let's say vulgar words, now people in a country abuse on a day-to-day basis. Now which are the abuses? I am not going to say here. We all know many people abuse on a day-to-day basis. Here the Supreme Court said that using such coarse language does not automatically constitute obscenity. Just because you are using bad words, it does not mean obscenity. For some people, using bad words is obscenity. That's the reason you see in movies and web series these days, bad words, abuses are used. And here the Supreme Court says that using abusive words does not mean that it is vulgar. In this case, this observation was reinforced, where the Supreme Court again said that distasteful language does not necessarily violate legal standards of obscenity. Now there is another section 69 which allows the government to block website. Let's say if the website is going against the interest of a country, if it is the content that is being shown is very immoral, then the government can block the website. But this broad application of section 69 has raised concerns over arbitrary censorship. For example, let's say there's a website that I have framed which is criticizing the policies of the government. The government can block my website stating that whatever I have written goes against the interest of our country. Because the government has the power. Then, under the IT rules of 2021, the digital platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hotstar, they were expected to self-regulate, which means before the government intervenes, you better correct yourself. Do not show any such material, any such content that forces the government to intervene. That's the reason these days you see the web series and the content that is being made are sort of are pro-government, or they do not like to offend the interest of the government. And yes, the courts have said that there has to be proportionality in censorship, which means whenever the government tries to censor a content, it should be in proportion to what is being said, written, or shown. And then, of course, if the government, let's say, tries to censor the content, we have the solution in the form of judiciary. We can knock the doors of the judiciary. Now, in the year 2021, there was this Amazon series Tanda which was criticized. Why? Because it offended the religious sentiments, and finally, the makers of the web series had to issue an apology. Post this scene, the government framed this IT rules of 2021 triggering for regulation in the digital content. And the recent episode where something vulgar was said, it can nudge, it can force the government to regulate the digital content, which means the government will decide what has to be shown to the public and what should not be shown to the public. Now, if the government does so, then this will be a huge infringement, huge violation to freedom of speech and expression, to the freedom of speech and expression, which is very, very fundamental to the growth of a country. I hope you understood the topic. Now let us discuss few questions. First question, significance of India-Qatar relationship, highlight key areas of cooperation and the broader geopolitical implication. So in the introduction, start by mentioning the elevation of the relationship to strategic partnership. Then in the body of the answer, highlight the growing areas of cooperation, trade, economy, energy, people to people, cultural, right, defense, security, geopolitical cooperation. Then highlight the geopolitical implication with respect to Gulf Cooperation Council, and then finally you can conclude the answer. Now these are the questions from yesterday's DNA. Let us discuss these questions. Delhi is located in the seismic zone 4, which is classified as a region with moderate earthquake shaking potential. Yes, this one is correct. Delhi lies within the Aravalli-Delhi Fold Belt, a region with past tectonic activity, but it remains seismically inactive. No, it is active. So this one is incorrect. This one is incorrect. So A becomes the correct answer. Next question. Following statements regarding electricity generation. Thermal power generation continues a major portion of India's total electricity generation. This is what we discussed yesterday. That's the reason we are focusing more on renewable sector or sources of energy. Why? To reduce the carbon imprint. Second, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Jharkhand are major electricity importers. No, they're exporters. They're the hub of for the coal production. So this one is incorrect. This is correct. And then these are the questions from today's daily. One, yes, this. The term color revolutions often seen in the news is associated with the post-Soviet states. We have Georgia, Kazakhstan, etc. Right? And then these are the questions from today's DNA 1, 2 and 3. Please attempt the questions. You'll find the link in the comment section. Open the DNA quiz link, attempt the answer and post the score in the comment section. I hope you understood all the topics that we have discussed as part of today's DNA. Before I call it a wrap, I request you to please hit the like, subscribe and share icon. Thank you so much for watching.